Deb, April, you guys on the phone? Did someone just join?
Can you hear me? This is Beth.
Hello?
Can you hear me? This is Beth Newman.
So is this Beth?
Yes?
Okay, we can't hear you very well.
Can you hear today? I don't know.
You know me, I'm always complaining about that.
In this particular room is different from all the rooms in the building, of course.
I'm always hot.
And it's never comfortable in the room.
I don't remember.
It's always more.
The way I feel about Florida in general.
Well, Jim has complained about this unit. He doesn't like it.
Hey, good, how are you?
In the other wings that we renovated, they don't.
I'm doing any good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes, we can. We need 3:30. The two people that are currently in South Florida to join before we can. We need one more person. Which they have assured me that they will.
Yeah, the meeting in North Korea. I love this.
Be careful what you ask for.
Deb, April, are you on?
Yeah.
I don't need that. Well, we tried.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard.
And I would have given it to her. Oh, I think it's good. We're gonna take that. Find out the tractor trailers. We're gonna have to take one of them. Yeah, and just like her.
I know.
I understand.
But I swear I'll come back.
Right. Well, that's the bunch when you we lost more than
Hi, we'll just join. Hi there. April and Deb.
They're going to
All right, we're going to get started. We have a full agenda today. I apologize. We did not have quorum in June, and then then we scheduled another meeting, and May. And then in June, we, I think, had a administrative mishap where we scheduled for times, and since this is a public meeting, we had to cancel that meeting because we did not have the correct GoToMeeting information out there. So during that time, however, the ESC has been meeting, and they also have had several ad hoc meetings as well to make some decisions. So we want to review all those decisions with you today and also review those items that are still open. So we'll get started first with roll call. So Deb?
Yeah.
Ed?
Here.
Stephen?
Here.
Carl?
Here.
April?
Here.
Beth?
Here.
And Linda sent me a text that she will be joining us later. Linda, by chance, are you on now? She's not. So we have roll call. Again, I'd like to thank you all for your time, your participation. Welcome you here today. As I mentioned, we have a full agenda. We do have one thing we can take off. We do not have an OLIV set date today. That perhaps will be coming later, so we'll take that off the agenda. That's when we do have one. I'm sure that's pretty lengthy. So first on the agenda after the welcome, we will have a review and approval of the last meeting minutes, which we may have to think back since it's been 2 weeks. So, Chris.
All right, the meeting minutes that you have are from our last meeting, which was held on April 12th, 2016. Can you all hear me on the phone okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so a couple of highlights from that meeting. Welcome and introduction. The meeting was called to order at 1:00 p.m. The advisory board members that were present are listed, as well as other DHSMD members and visitors. During the April 12th meeting, we also approved the meeting minutes from March 31st. There was a minor correction that was also incorporated. At the bottom of page 1, we performed a stakeholder outreach update, giving you all an update on some of the meetings that were conducted, or the meetings that were conducted with the Department of State on April 4th, 2016. Page 2 starts the policy and decisions review, and the outcome of that conversation has been documented there. So I'll give you an opportunity to scan. We also reviewed the legal opinion document, the document with items that we tracked for our legal advisor, Peter Scombelli. That continues on to page 3. Midway through page 3, we gave a phase 1 program update, status on the requirements grooming, a financial review, as well as an IB&B update. Bottom of page 3 starts the communication update provided by Samadi Jones. And the meeting came to a close and was adjourned at 1:35 p.m. And the next meeting date is listed, although we did not have quorum and did not conduct the main meeting. On the last page, page 4, are a list of handouts that were provided during the meeting. Any corrections, questions, comments? All right, hearing none at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the minutes from the April 12th, 2016 advisory board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is, we've discussed this several times with the ESC, and we wanted to talk to the advisory board. I can't remember if we talked about this at all with you all, but it is, do we need to change the name of the customer portal? Right now it's called My DMV. There's been a lot of discussion about, is there any negative connotation with the name, DMV and that sort of thing. The ESC has been trying to think of a few names. I think at the last meeting, Eileen, that's from IBM, Ernst & Young was there, and as we came to names, she was shooting them down left and right because she would Google and somebody already had it. Somebody wanted eDrive or MyDrive, and I think that's Garmin or whatever, the navigation systems. And she says, well, from her standpoint, you might think there may be something negative associated with the DMV, but when I think about what I'm going to look for, she said, that's what I'm going to look for, DMV. So we wanted to briefly kind of open this up to the advisory board and get your thoughts on it. The ESC they threw out a couple of names, but nothing so far. There's been no decision to change it, but we wanted to get probably some guidance from the advisory board with, is there a better name, and is there a need to change the name from the MyDMV customer portal perhaps to something else?
There might be a better name out there somewhere, but whenever we get calls from people that are looking for things that get misdirected to others, usually because they put in DMV. So that's how we're recognized as DMV.
And I
to look for something.
My question there was, are we talking about naming the portal? Or are we talking about choosing a URL? And I know there's like, you can use the URL that you actually type into your computer, but then you get there and you call it whatever. So is it all the same thing?
Yeah, the way I have been viewing it, I would think that
we don't own MyDMV, do we?
No. I think from the discussions that we've had with the ESC, it has mainly been what we would call the portal.
And that's what I thought.
Right.
I know I'm being.
No, that's right. That's good. Actually, right point.
Right, because So are we talking about? I agree with Ed. I think the negative connotation to the word DMV or to the acronym DMV comes from people's experiences that they have in an office over the history of many years. But at the same time, it is what they know. And so if you want to go to the right page, you want them to find you. I think you're better off working on helping alleviate any negative connotation than you are trying to change your name. In other words, let's make our experience with them better, so there isn't one.
Which hopefully they'll have with the portal.
They'll hopefully have a good experience. But if you really want them to find you and you don't want them to go to some other site by trying to get too creative, I think if you get too far off what people know, there's just going to be more confusion about which one's the right one. The only other thing I would say about the URL is, if you're talking about URL, I think it needs to be .gov and not .com.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It needs to be, because our SLA doesn't be a .gov. I think, again, to make sure people are going to the right place, stick with the .gov. Beyond that, that would be my only other suggestion.
Everyone else, Carl, like you had?
No, in general, I agree with it's probably how I found it when I moved to Florida. It's probably what most comes to people's minds when they're, other than to search for the specifics of driver's license and things like that. But
right.
You can't really get any keywords in the name, so I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's more appropriate.
Sure. Deb, April, Beth, anyone? Any other?
Yeah, we are DMV to the public, and I think keeping that, it is going to be easier for people to find because that is what they associate us with.
I agree.
Who said they agree?
Yeah.
Beth?
That was Beth.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda was the stakeholder outreach. We've had quite a few meetings since the last advisory board meeting. We have been trying to finish requirements grooming. Along with the requirements grooming and validation of the requirements, the developers have been, I think they're due with the next week to development estimation. What's the, right, when the development estimation is due?
So we have a series of activities that are still happening as a part of change request,
Right.
and those are scheduled out through the end of the month.
Okay, that's right. But and as part of that, they're doing development estimation, and as Kristen said, there were change requests, and of course, they've been writing test cases this entire time as well. So all of that is on track. The grooming tour, they have looked over this stuff several times, so hopefully it's right. And I'm sure we'll still, as we move into development, find things that we'll have to understand. You're nodding yes, find things that we'll have to change. But so far, we feel pretty good about where we are. We're working on creating a change control board as well. That's been some of the meetings we've had. We want a group to vet the changes that come from the teams, and then we'll, of course, discuss those here and also and that's just approving to add it to the backlog. Because at some point we know as we go through the course of development, which is scheduled to start on the 21st, by the way, people are going to think of all these new ideas, all these new things, and they might be great, it might all be valid, but the ESC has told us, hey, this is your schedule, this is your timeline, you got to be finished in, so we've got to be able to vet those things and put forth what we can, and those things that don't make it, they don't make it, and so we're working on that process to ensure we have that ready to go. Kristen had a meeting today to finalize some things. We had some recommendations from IBMV that we have followed as well that we met on today with folks from Accenture and all of the project managers as well. And we're wrapping up completing a charter for that team as well for approval by the ESC on the 21st. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, we've had meetings with the tax collectors. We've had meetings with the Department of State. We have a technical meeting with the Department of State this afternoon, a technical IT subgroup meeting. But Jessica originally we had a meeting with the tax collectors down in January, and then we had 2 follow-up meetings with the vendors that do the renewal files for the tax collectors. So I want to start with Jessica. After that meeting, had a second follow-up meeting with the tax collectors on deal issuance. You want to give us just a quick overview of what we've got?
Our meeting was on May 9th. We just went over baseline requirements validation update, kind of told them where we were at with our requirements validation. We discussed the current activities, and then we also reviewed the open items we had from the first meeting back in January. Reviewed some screens for the new deal issuance system, or the proposed screens, and then also discussed local reports, which was kind of the focus of that meeting. Deal issuance.
Also, as I mentioned, as a follow-up to the meeting that we had with the tax collectors, we had sort of like a kickoff meeting with them, which we reported on here in January, and we had 2 follow-up meetings with their technical, with the vendors that do the renewal file for them. We had that meeting as well. We had one on March 30th, and not all the people that attended that meeting were the right technical folks that have in the room, so therefore we had to have a second follow-up meeting held on May 12th, and that meeting we had the right folks in the room. Chad was there, went over all the technical specifications and things that they would need to know, even gave out went through several samples of code that they could use. He even offered to give them a starting point with the software, like a basic place to start with the development and things they would need to do on their end. They seemed to like the meeting and would like to meet throughout the project, which we said that we could do, to give them updates along the way. So that was a very good meeting that we had with them as well. One of the key things that we had to discuss with the vendors was, as you know, we have a release plan. We have spec'd out the functionality and when it's going to be complete over the course of development. So therefore, we believe, based on the release plan, that we can get the motor vehicle renewals done about a year early. And we want to make sure that all of that, of course, would depend on if the vendors are ready. So we want to present that timeline for them to see if they were agreeable, and they were. There was nothing that any of them heard that they thought that was out of bounds or they could not achieve. As a matter of fact, a few of them expressed that they were happy that we were moving technically in the direction that we were going because it allowed them more flexibility as well. So those are some of the meetings, so the highlights from the meetings that we've had. We continue to try to develop a schedule for meetings with the focus groups and everything as we move forward. So now we will, as I mentioned, there are a lot of decisions that the ESP has made. Some are still open. We're going to go over the open ones first, and then we're going to try to get through all the ones to give you an update on the decisions made by the ESP. If we don't finish, then of course we will pick up that at the next meeting. But Jessica, are you up first? Okay.
So you have the
And let me just apologize. We have Kathleen is no longer here. We're actively interviewing right now for replacement for Kathleen, and we have someone helping us for the summer. And we did not say, hey, print this on bigger paper, make it bigger, because people can't see it like me. So I will be looking at the screen. So that's why you have it up. Hopefully on the phone you can see the screen as well. Trust me, you're better off than trying to look at this paper that we just passed out. So I apologize, and we will hopefully get through this.
Perfect. So the first item, the one that's not shaded, is DL23. The DHSMB should have access to the motor voter data so that we know what updates truly need to take place. Currently, we only have the customer's word to go by, and they are sometimes mistaken about their current voter registration status. Perhaps a standalone online voter registration system could be used outside of the issuance. So, when we discussed this previously, the action item was to discuss the possibility of creating an audit report for applications submitted to DOS, and also we said that we would add it to the legal opinion to try to find out if there was an issue with DOS, and with them releasing the information, we found out that they don't have an issue with releasing the information. They just wanted to run it by their technical group and the policy, and check with the policy to see that it was okay with them. So our last DOS meeting was postponed on the 13th of May. We've since then had another meeting where they expressed that they were comfortable with releasing some of the information, and I think during today's technical group meeting that they're going to have with DOS, they're going to discuss the possibility of integrating or having some kind of web service that pulls that information. Of course, it would only be during a transaction. So if you wanted to see the status of the voter, you would just see whether they were registered or not, and then what their last address was. And it would only display once the transaction has been started for that customer and they've selected that they are going to apply for motor voter. So it's just open because we're waiting on that decision and kind of more details on the technical aspect of it. So moving on, the next item is BL26. Will the department purchase hardware to scan or read checks to validate the check during the cashiering process? I had an action item to go and look for some stats. We did get our stats back. Currently, we have 800 outstanding bad checks for Fitless and 1,700 for Frivis. In the last 3 years, the numbers have been declining of how many we get or new ones that we get. So fiscal year 13-14, we got 1,600. 14-15, we got 790, and then 15-16, we got 780 for Fitless alone. Frivis has higher numbers. They have been declining by about 1,000 every year for the past 3 years, but they started with 5,100, moved down to 42, and then our last year they were at 39.95. So they still get about 4,000 right now. So we're just looking for a recommendation at this point based on the numbers. Do you guys think that we should recommend to the ESC that we do go on and purchase the scanners or discuss whether it makes a difference if we have them or we don't have them? And I know I've had conversations with
You're not just purchasing a scanner. I mean,
Right, it would be the service as well, right?
so there's an ongoing monthly fee.
Right. And it's hundreds of offices that might average, less than 3 or 4
Correct.
a year.
I mean, I know 3,900 sounds like a lot, but in highway safety speak, it's actually not that many at all.
Very, very
On a statewide basis, spread across 12 months, 250 offices, or maybe 300 offices divided by 12 months. If you look at it on a per office per month basis, there's no more office getting one. They wouldn't even use it hardly. And in terms of bad checks, processing them is a pain in the behind. I mean, I totally get that. We do make, after proper paperwork has been done, we do reimburse the county for bad checks. The state does. So they're not out that much.
And there is still a fee in place for collecting from the person who issued that check.
Anyone on the phone? All right. So I guess the recommendation at this point is know that you don't see.
I don't think it's cost effective.
I don't think it's cost effective. Not for 3,900 checks. I guess it's not 3,900.
Yeah, it's more like closer to 5,000.
Yeah, closer to 5,000.
The other service that comes with it, though, is check audit.
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear that.
There's kind of another service with it, aside from just preventing us from accepting bad checks. It also allows that person to be assured that their check will be deposited with us there on site as it is scanned and verified. And that was decided as a service that Director Rhodes was interested in, just as a means of the control of when that check comes to us and is deposited, it couldn't be pocketed or tabled. Fall victim to fraud at a later time, but as a total percentage of our transactions, it's under 0.5%.
And going down.
And
I mean,
going down
that's the other piece.
drastically.
It's going down. So by the time you could even buy the equipment and implement such a service, it'll be leaving hopefully even less than what you stated.
Right.
It's another piece of equipment out there on the counter where in some cases we've got limited space right now. Would it be simply for the state offices or would it be for the tax collector offices as well?
I took it to mean it was.
Yeah, I think the ESC wanted to know what the numbers would be for both. One for the state offices alone, and then also for all offices.
Because I think the tax collectors, some of them already have,
Some of them probably do.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine that they already get some of those services with their third-party cashiering. All right.
The other option we have is to just stop taking checks.
I think since we got rid of the surcharge for cards, for credit cards, a lot of people are moving towards that. And if you see the numbers between 13-14 and 14-15, there was a huge decline in how many bad checks we were getting because people are just not carrying checks as often. But
Right, that's about when we started accepting Visa as well, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah. All right, so I'll move on to the next item, DL27. Should the department continue to collect race and ethnicity as one field? Also, should the current list of race and ethnicity be updated to align with any other agencies, such as the Census, DOS, etc.? We discussed this with the ESC, and we talked about how I reached out to DOS, and DOS said that they just follow whatever the minimum requirement is. That minimum requirement comes from the Office of Management budget, and they just use the minimum requirements as well. And they have a recommendation. There's 6 items, and they list them as both race and ethnicity. It's not separated the way that some other places do it, where they have the race in one section and then the ethnicity in another. So when we talk about this with the ESC, they were leaning towards following what that standard is that the OMB puts out, since the DOS is already following the standard, and there's several other agencies that are already following the standard, such as the census. We're not too far off in FIDLIS right now with the selections that we have, but there are some differences in the way that we put them out there. Another option we talked about was possibly sending it to the signature pad so that the customer themselves selects it, but I think that there's some concern, because the reason why we collect that information is more for law enforcement. So if the customer is selecting it themselves, then they would have the ability to select whatever they wanted, regardless of whether they appear to be that race or not, or ethnicity. So there's an action item for Diana to reach out to FDLE and discuss how the changes may affect them if we were to put it out in the signature pad. And I think we're going to have to discuss a little bit more in detail how those changes could affect them.
Is there still discussion to have it appear on the new driver's license?
I haven't heard that, so I'm not sure.
I haven't. And if we're making these changes, we'll have to consider if someone does let's say a convenient renewal or address change, and we've got one ethnicity, and we're making changes, how is that, and it does appear on the DL or ID card, what's going to happen when you get something on in the mail that doesn't match what they feel? Or when the customer says, this is my ethnicity or race, and it is not what they appear to be, but truly that when it used to appear on the DL and ID card, it truly is whatever the customer wants on there. So
right.
There's some things that we're going to have to discuss and some policy decisions as we move forward with it.
Right now, it only appears on the driver record, correct?
Correct.
Only on the record. The customer never knows.
I'll notice it.
Only on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll add those to the items so that we can consider if it does appear on the DL or ID card, what are we going to have, what things do we have to consider if the customer receives it in the mail and they didn't get to select their own, or if it doesn't exactly say what they feel they are.
How are we using this information today?
Right now, it's just, I think it's strictly for law enforcement and for stats.
Law enforcement to do what with?
So that they can, it helps to identify whenever they have a traffic stop or.
Okay. So what did you deny?
I think I was just looking for some kind of recommendation or things to think about. I think Deb has some good points. I didn't know that it was going to be on the DL or ID card, or could possibly.
Yeah, there was some discussion about that. I don't know that a firm decision has been made, but obviously, if it does, that's going to raise some other questions and concerns on how we're.
Well, I think at this point we just need more information on it. We need to meet with the FDLE first, and then discuss it with them, how it can affect them, and then once we have more information, we can bring it up again and get a recommendation.
In terms of if you're going to follow a standard at all, I think the OMB standards are just as fine as.
Okay.
Pardon?
I just said if you're going to try to standardize the issue, using the federal government standard is just as good as any others, and I don't have an issue with that. That's the thing you're going to do.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to know what the question was we're trying to.
Yes, you're right. That I think the standard is one of the things we wanted to get a recommendation for before we went out and talked to FDLE as well. All right. So the next item is DL30. Can ECI be accessed and updated outside of a transaction? the team removed the ability to view ECI from the deal issuance customer summary after review of statutes 119.0712 and 32208. The statute states the following: without the express consent of the person whom such emergency contact information applies, the emergency contact information maintained in the motor vehicle record may be released only to law enforcement agencies for the purpose of contacting those listed in the event of an emergency. So originally we planned to display the information on the customer summary so that anybody that needed to update that information could just go there just look up the customer. In the customer summary, just select the tab with ESC information and update it outside of a transaction. And the reason why we planned for that and discussed it was because during one of our January focus group meeting, there was a lot of discussion from the tax collectors about wanting to be able to do that outside of a transaction just as customer service. A lot of their customers come in, and even if they don't get service, they will still ask them, hey, do you want to update your ECI? And right now what they have to do is they have to actually go out to the public website, look up ECI, and then go through that workflow. But then after more discussion, we found that maybe the examiners or the agents shouldn't really be looking at that information unless the customer says, hey, I actually want to change this. So the team, after discussing it, the team recommended that we continue to collect the ECI during the transaction and then add a quick link to the deal issuance system that takes them directly to that public site where they can update it. So they wouldn't have to go through what they go through today, where they have to look for it or they have to save a bookmark or something like that to get there. You could just, in the same application, just select a quick link and update it. Although it still wouldn't show them any of the information, it'll just be quicker than what they're doing today.
So the only difference is you're not going to display the current ECI information to the examiner. They just have the option of putting in new information which overwrites the old.
Right. And I do have an action item to reach out to tax collector focus group and find out if the quick link actually meets their need. Because if it doesn't meet their need, then we might have to discuss more about what else we can do to make it easier.
Right. I mean, but they can go, all you have to have is a browser to do that.
Right.
So.
All right, so I'll let Judy start.
On Renewal 04, the tax collector focus group would like to add a link to on the actual email notice that we presented to them. There was a column where we had the actual by mail fee. They wanted to change it into a link that would take the customer to one of the websites. And this is an item we decided to go back to them. That link would be confusing because they were afraid, the team was afraid that the customer would try to print that out and mail it in, and it wouldn't have, this is on the actual email notice, and it wouldn't have any of the barcodes or the codes that the high-speed reader needed to have. So if they mailed in the email notice, it wouldn't work. So we're going to take that back to them to see what they think about it, if it's still something they want to pursue. On Renewal 06, currently the new renewal notification system will print renewal notices for all registrants where the primary resident address is out of state. In the old system, these registrations were processed by us looking at what county processed the registration previously, and if it wasn't previously processed by a county, we then had a list of 6 counties that we rotated through to have them process sending those renewal notices. So the department has decided in order to not use the rotating 6 because it was kind of unfair to them because they would pay the expense of mailing out the renewal notices, but they wouldn't necessarily be the ones processing it on the back end. So the department is going to print all the out-of-state notices, and we were just going to do it blanketly. We were not going to use the condition where we check to see where they renewed previously. And that was kind of brought to our attention because it may have some impact on, especially when it comes to some of the rental car companies that have vehicles registered in the state, but their office is located outside the state. So that's another decision we're going to take back to the focus group to kind of get their opinion on as well. The last item was renewal notice processing. Currently, the return of the driver's license notices, those are processed by Department of Revenue. In the new portal system, we were looking to bring all that work in-house. April and Jamie Westbury currently, they met. I think Jamie's going to get back with, currently Novitex has our current, does all of our printing right now, and she's working on getting a price of what it would cost to bring that work in-house. And then once we get that price, we'll take it back to the ESC in order for them to make a recommendation. So right now we're still waiting on some more information for that. That's all we have for open items. We'll move to the next document, which is the recently closed by ESC, but I guess hasn't been reviewed by the advisory board. The first one on the list, Portal 24. This has to do with currently if a transcript request is received in the mail for a driver's license record and a driver's license record is not found, the customer does not receive the refund unless the amount sent is greater than $10, or the customer requests a refund for the amount exceeding the $2 not found fee. The mixed process currently charges $2 for all not found record requests. The portal team is requesting that we do not charge the $2 fee for other driver license requests when the driver license or social security number entered is not found. We will, however, charge this fee for bulk driver license records requests. And so basically, when we were talking about this in the portal, if someone came to the portal, put in the driver's license number, and the record was not found, we were kind of hesitant of charging them the $2 because once they got to the shopping cart, they could just abandon the cart and wouldn't pay it anyway. But what the recommendation was that we would give them the option because for some people, they may want to show that it was not found. So the decision was return the message that is not found, let them decide if they still want to purchase that, and if so, we would then charge you $2. For Portal 26, scanned documents, during the ESC meeting held on 2/18, a request was made to allow portal customers the ability to view documents that were scanned in a field office. Members from the portal and DL issuance teams have concerns about this request because sometimes documents are scanned and attached to the wrong customer records. Allowing this functionality in the portal could give customers the ability to see passport, social security number, and other documents which do not belong to them. After discussing this with the ESC and bringing light to them the issue about documents getting scanned to the wrong customer records, it was decided that we would not allow this functionality in the portal. However, it could be offered in the field offices as part of DL issuance, and that they would treat it like a public record request. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, we're just adding in DL issuance, proposing to add a selection for, just like BAR has public records requests where they can add document types, and the document fee would be $50 for a non-certified and then $1 for a certified option. But we still haven't groomed out, what determines whether it's certified or not certified, and then what kind of watermark or some type of putting on their disclaimer to say this is not an official document, it's just a copy of what was presented here at the DL office.
All right, Portal 27, withdraw parental consent. Currently, the department policy is to make the cancellation effective the day the parent withdraws consent, and there's mention of the statute there. There was some question on the team because some of our other cancellations and things of that nature had like a 20-day post date, and so there was some concern there, so the team brought it to ESC, and they stated that the withdrawal will be effective immediately upon request. So that issue was closed. Next is Jessica.
Next item is DL 28. Bar users process replacement licenses for customers who are Real ID compliant, U.S. citizens, and immigrants only. And all issuance are processed through states. Bar users would like to request that the DL application process is modified to not include ID documents, applicant screening, as well as vision and hearing questions. Currently, information on the ID document screen is not collected because bar users do not have the ability to take a photo signature and do not require equipment for vision testing. They also don't have or don't scan currently. So when we discussed this with the ESC, what they suggested is that we just follow the workflow for portal, which doesn't include some of those questions like vision and exams. So that's what we're working on currently, to try to modify that workflow so that they only see what you would see if you were doing a online transaction. Next item is DL 29. Will the department allow users to edit the customer's email outside of a transaction? The ESC decided that we would allow customers' email address to be edited in Motorist maintenance and record changes as a customer update transaction. We do have an action item to discuss further with the business users to determine what types of customer update transactions would require notification to be sent to the customer. So if they came in and they updated their address, we would just send them a letter saying, hey, by the way, your email address was updated. Just want to let you know this isn't you. You know, these are the steps you need to take. Next item is DL 31. Currently, the system gives users 6 options that determine what steps are necessary for completing a motor voter requirement of credential issuance transactions. Some of these options are not currently used or understood, and the users are requesting that the unused options are retired from the application. So when we discussed this with DOS, we determined that the items are still necessary, and we just gave an explanation or clarified the explanation so that we would display those explanations on the signature pad for the customer to know exactly what steps they were taking with their motor voters. Next item is DL 32. Currently, users must rekey the customer's email address in the motor voter application during every issuance. Users are requesting that the system save previously used email addresses to avoid having to rekey if the address remains the same. Based on our communication with DOS, and DL issuance SMEs, they recommend that only email addresses entered on the same day would be pre-populated on the motor voter application so that users do not have to rekey the information in the event that the credential is voided or abandoned. So in other words, we're not going to save the information because we're not allowed to, but if for any reason the transaction was voided or abandoned and they start a new transaction, it would remember that information that was entered on the same day and then repopulate it for them. Next item is DL 33. Currently, users are only required to select party affiliation for customers who are requesting a new motor voter application. The supervisor of election is requesting that the party affiliation is asked during all motor voter applications so that customers may update this information if necessary. And based on our previous communication with DOS, they recommend that the customers be required to select their party affiliation for all transactions, and the ESC agrees with the recommendation. Next item is DL 34. Currently, users are required to verbally administer the motor voter oath to the customer. The supervisor of election is requesting that the oath be displayed on the signature pad so that customers can review their motor voter oath before submission. Based on our communications with DOS, they recommend that the oath is displayed with the party affiliation on the signature pad, and the ESC agrees with the recommendation. Next item is DL 35. Currently, the system validates the address entered on the motor voter form against the street index list provided by the supervisor of elections. The SOE is requesting that the addresses go through additional verification to avoid invalid addresses from being submitted. Based on our communication with DOS and DL issuance SMEs, they recommend the following. One, the DL issuance system will have a vendor verify that the address will, we will attempt to parse the address on the motor voter screen. And then two, the vendor will validate the information that was entered. And the ESE agrees with the recommendation. Next item is DL 36. Currently, the system does not validate email address entered in the motor voter application, and the SOE is requesting that the email is verified to avoid invalid email addresses from being submitted. Based on our research, DHS&V recommends using an email format check to prevent performance issues that may be caused by an email verification tool. So instead of doing it real time, we'll just check that it's in the correct format. And the ESE agrees with the recommendation. Next is DL 37. Currently, it is procedure that users inform customers to keep their motor voter receipt so that SOE can use it if they are unable to locate the record of the customer's motor voter application. The SOE is requesting that the DHS&V enforces this procedure and policy, and DOS and the OMM focus group recommends the following. We will add the disclaimer to the motor voter application receipt that tells them to keep that receipt. Customer motor voter selection will be on the cashier receipt, and it's already on the motor voter receipt. And party affiliation selection would be on both the motor voter application receipt and the cashier receipt. So in case they lose one, they have the other with all the same information. And the ESE agrees with the recommendation.
Next, we have Renewal 05, and basically this was pertaining to bad check stop. We were inconsistent in some places where the customer had a bad check stop. We weren't allowing certain transactions to go forward. The renewal team brought the question forward because they were asking whether we should, if the customer had a bad check stop, should we prevent the renewal of the handicap parking placard? And the decision was made by the ESC that we would not enforce that on parking permits. On Renewal 08, for no fee, but just we wouldn't stop them from renewing. Renewal 08 for NCOA, we currently, we have two databases, and there were two jobs that were extracting information to send off to get the updated national change of address. In the new systems, we're going to combine our custom records, so there would only be one job, and we were verifying the information to determine the selection criteria for sending which customers, and basically trying to determine what's considered active. And so we were just going over those results, and basically if for the individuals deceased or the sexual predator or career offender or the records for permanent ID, we would not send those records for our driver's license customers. And then on the motor vehicle side, any customer with a registration not expired more than 24 months, and there's some other criteria there for as far as Class C and different things. So we're just trying to combine the criteria for selection for sending off what we consider to be active records for address changes.
And the last one is Nurse Maintenance 01, and it dealt with the conversion for the restriction requirements, realizing that the C restriction category had more than one restriction that qualified as a C for the mechanical aid restriction. And we're trying to determine whether we wanted to display only one restriction on the face of the license and multiple on the back. One of the comments was from the advisory board to remember to account for indicators from bills that pass for lifetime fishing, hunting, etc. The recommendation, we did some research on stats to see what restrictions were no longer being used, but we really came down to the ESC recommended using the Florida two-digit specified code, and we were going to arrange it based on the use of the endorsement as far as the hierarchy of it. I don't know if you can explain any more.
Yeah, but basically any new codes or any codes that are not required by AMBA would just be a number between 1 and 9 for the moment, and then if we needed to go to a 2 code, then we would go to 10, 11, 12, and then all the AMBA would just follow whatever that standard is, and then we would just fill in the unused codes with Florida specific ones, or leave them empty for in the event that AMBA requires a new code to be added.
And that's all of them.
All right. That should cover all the ones that are still open with the ESC and all the ones that have been closed by the ESC since this group last met, correct? Okay, great. Actually, we might get out earlier than I thought today. Give you back some time. A couple more items left. We can have Janice give us a financial review and on what we're doing as we transition to development, and then we'll go from there.
Quickly on 15-16 cent plan, we are obviously in 16-17. 15-16, we have spent all of our funds. We've spent everything. We have 2 deliverables that we have are in the process of receiving during the month of July. One is lessons learned, and then which is our monthly status report that we get from Accenture. We have received it in process of reviewing it, so that should be finalized. So those 2 amounts will be carried forward, so we can pay those and offset the remaining portion of 15-16 spend plan. On the back page, on the back page is our 16-17 spend plan. We did get our contract with Accenture approved for the next 3 years. So that's been signed and forwarded to all the parties, and we are getting into, we have already received our first deliverable for 16-17, which we received today. We're in the process of reviewing that. So we're on track for working on that. And that's pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
All right, so as we've been talking, we are mobile reform development, which is gearing up to start next week. Some of the things that we're working on, we're wrapping up, as Terrence mentioned, some of the final requirements validation activities that we have on the site. So we have change requests that still need to be validated. We also have a little bit of test case development, as well as a little bit of development estimation that we're working with. Doing our kind of baseline list of requirements that we're going to start developing. We are also updating kind of our internal management procedures. So we're going through our program management plan, making sure, our processes for change management are sound, our processes for managing all of the development activities are still as solid as we believe them to be when we first developed them. Just going through and making some refinements to the PMP. I am targeting updating the program management plan by the end of this week, because we plan to kind of review the updates with the executive steering committee next week. We're also making schedule refinements. So each year we have to go in and update all of the deliverables in our program schedule. We're also doing some enhancements to kind of better reflect what we're doing as a part of the development. So putting in some more detail about the development activities that are occurring. We are also preparing to conduct what we're calling a phase gate review with the Executive Steering Committee next week. So that looks at 2 aspects. It looks at the completeness of all the requirements validation work that we were supposed to get done this fiscal year, as well as some kind of indicators that we're ready to start development. So looking at those things that I just mentioned, making sure that we have our processes in place, making sure that we, wrapped up any loose ends, et cetera, so that they can formally give us the green light to start development. And then last but not least, we're onboarding several staff members. As Terrence mentioned, we have extended our contract with Accenture. Yes. And so Janice is working tirelessly to onboard several new development staff members that are coming here. So we have some development team members that will be working here, and then we have some that will be working off-site in Atlanta or Tampa. That's correct. So that's kind of where we are. Any questions?
All right, so we are going to push the change request review to our next meeting, and we will review those change requests. If you have several, none of them are major, as we mentioned earlier. Those are the ones that we received from the teams, and the teams are now going back, creating the user stories, validating, getting reviewing for those change requests to move forward, getting it ready for development. As we mentioned earlier, scheduled timeline for completing those additional change requests is the end of the month. So, and as far as the requirements validation, we, as I mentioned, we're ready to move into development. So we feel good about where we are. We just want to make sure that we stay on track. It will be very nice as we report downtown for a session to say that we're still on track and on schedule. I would love to stand up there and say that and not be behind, so we're going to work toward that. We have already had, that's one of the meetings that we've had. We had a meeting about a month ago. The legislative staff, they wanted an update on the project, and we went down, showed them the release plan, the work we've done, and everything. Janice gave them the budget update, and there were some questions, but we haven't received any follow-up questions as of yet. So things are still good there. As you know, we received full funding this year, and we would like to receive full funding next year as we move to our request for the second part of our development. So that's actually, I stood here earlier and said we have a full agenda with this here. I thought, we're going to go to the end, and we finished early. Anyone have any questions?
Parents, hey, this is Linda Fugit.
Hey, Linda.
Hey, I just want to tell the committee I'm very sorry for my absenteeism. Of course, it couldn't be helped, but I am back on board, and please forgive me for being absent.
Oh, no. We understand everything well from your family.
Well, hopefully on a good track now, other than I just left the doctor and my leg may be broken, but I'm not going to let that stop me. Wow. So we're happy that you're back on board with us. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you all. Sure. Thank you. Thank you all on the phone. Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Linda.
I hope to make it next month.
All right. Okay.